The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
Welcome back. The U.S. House will take up a $1 trillion infrastructure bill when they return from recess at the end of the month. Several House reps on both sides of the aisle are pushing back against a crypto provision in the bill that broadens the definition of broker for tax reporting purposes to include miners and developers. Joining us now to discuss is Aaron Tilton, former Utah state legislator and CEO of crypto platform SmartFi and energy infrastructure developer Blue Castle Holdings. Hi there, Aaron. Good to have you on the show. So as a former Utah state legislator, I'm really curious, when you saw Senate lawmakers try to address the issue with a compromise crypto amendment brought before the U.S. Senate for unanimous consent, and one lone senator, Alabama Senator Richard Shelby, objected to the amendment because he didn't get his war money approved. What was your reaction when you saw that play out?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I think that's very typical, right? When you look at legislation and when there are issues that crop bills that typically are not topical to it, infrastructure related to taxation on cryptocurrencies. A lot of people looked at it and said those two topics don't really go together. It's really just kind of a money grab where they're looking to enforce reporting, and you have another senator try to push another agenda in terms of military funding. You get this kind of mismatch of a lot of topics, and I guess the old saying is that legislation is kind of like making sausage, but I would add that in legislation there's more rat excrement, right? It's a crazy process, and something that when you watch it, a lot of times it doesn't make sense.
So this infrastructure bill is clearly just the beginning of crypto being debated in Congress. And I think the question for me is, how do you get more lawmakers to actually spend political capital on this issue, right? Because there's so many things that they're fighting for and they have to answer to their constituents. So what would make more kind of local politicians want to fight for the cryptocurrency industry?
Well, I think first off, you have to be engaged. One of the things that we've done 2 years ago, we invited Congressman John Curtis, who is my House member, to speak at one of the conferences we sponsored, and we had him involved in an organization, the Chain Crypto Mining Association. So we engaged them early on and often, letting them know that the things that are involved in cryptocurrencies are impacting their constituents. And frankly, you have to let some of your money flow as well. You've got to donate to their candidates, to these candidates and to their causes, so that they know that you're interested, you have resources, and that when issues like this come up, you'll be engaged, and that their constituents will be engaged, and that they know that this matters to them. That's the number one way to make sure that what you're doing matters and it gets their attention. And so we've also reached out to John again, Congressman Curtis, to make sure that this is on his radar and that he understands that this was going to come before him in the House. He's also a member of the Blockchain Caucus.
But I guess the question for me is, why exactly would this matter to their constituents, right? At least look at the issues that we're talking about in the infrastructure bill. Specifically, crypto advocates are warning that miners or validators or software developers will leave, but that doesn't really affect a critical mass of Americans, right, in most of these places. So how do you make the argument that this is really important, or that they should actually care about something like this? Because I just feel like this is going to come up again and again.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right, is that the issues cannot be framed in a form of debate that limits it to maybe a highly technical kind of structure related to either DeFi. I know that the amendments are seen as trying to basically carve out DeFi or technologists who are developing wallets. That's not a very broad platform, and that doesn't frame the debate as impactful to most Americans. And the way that I would frame this, and that we have with our legislators, is that it's an issue that's going to impact a lot of retired Americans, or that are going into retirement, or they're looking to add cryptocurrencies to their retirement portfolio. It's not just about trying to carve out technology. There's a lot of innovation that goes on in this space, but until you can tie the technology in a way that impacts daily life for investors, most legislators are not going to see it as a mainstream issue. This has actually helped bring that to the forefront where they're having this debate. And now crypto has kind of taken center stage in this kind of what I would say is a little bit of a legislative wrangling. I'll give you an example. Just recently, a few months ago, we converted all of the stock, virtually all of the stock in our company, to our internal token. So our shareholders who had been in our company for the last, some as long as 14 or 15 years, are now faced with the fact that they have to look at their investment as a cryptocurrency and not a share anymore. So the taxation on this now is framed differently for them. And most of them are used to the reporting requirements that are going to be implemented in this bill and look at this as a way that they can engage this structure in their self-directed IRAs or in their retirement accounts. And so you bet they're absolutely interested in this topic, and they want to know how is Congress going to address the taxation that they may face with our token. That's when people get engaged.
Aaron, I kind of want to shift the topic just a little bit to green mining. You have a lot of thoughts on that. You hear the likes of Elon Musk, who came out and criticized the way Bitcoin is mined. Do you think that's a lot of people just talking their book? Somebody who, for instance, like Elon Musk, who's in the business of selling credits and selling solar panels and things like that. Are we seeing pressure on the miners from people who have an interest in getting miners to do certain things in the way they mine for their own benefit?
Well, miners as a community and kind of their business structure, they're kind of siloed. They're kind of the unknown entity around cryptocurrency. They're often talked about, but seldom heard from, and people don't recognize what a role is. So I think, to your point earlier, it is a little bit about Elon Musk kind of, eating his own dog food, right? I'm not sure that he would know where all the electricity comes from to power his cars. In fact, that's kind of an unknowable thing. But in terms of a portfolio for clean electricity, miners know exactly where their electricity comes from. And given the opportunity economically, they'll make the shift. But it really has to do with the competitive nature of mining and the source of electricity. And a lot of our customers were miners. They had relied on hydropower, which is very clean, obviously, and very green. But the overall portfolio in terms of where your electricity comes from is very nebulous. But what I think you'll see is a lot of consolidation. The what I would call industrial scale mining, which are quite a few of our customers, they are interested in both adopting larger scale clean energy like nuclear power, which is how we got into this space in the first place. They're interested in making sure that they can be competitive at scale. And when you start to get at scale and you talk about the combination of nuclear power with hydro, that is the confluence of those two characteristics of that energy source. So I think it's happening naturally. I don't think you need a lot of legislation as we talk about our government mandates or tweets from Elon Musk for this to happen. It's happening anyways because those resources are the most economic and they have a broader implication when it comes to scaling out the networks.
Right. Aaron, I wonder your thoughts on this, that, some folks are worried that if the United States overregulates the crypto industry, that could drive miners out, and that would set back the clean mining movement about 5 years. Is that something you foresee or agree with?
I think it's a concern. You always have to be concerned about regulation, right? I think Ronald Reagan said the 9 most feared words in the English language, I'm here from the government to help, or something like that, And so I think that is always a concern. And while you always have to be engaged early, frame the debate around the industry, what we're trying to do, and the appeal of cryptocurrencies to the average user and to kind of the kitchen table conversation for legislators. So as it relates to how would that impact miners or people that are developers? I think so. I think if you have these overly broad kind of dragnet kind of approaches to legislation, you're going to set back the structure in terms of how the industry is able to innovate. You're going to drive technology overseas. And I think that that's always a concern. So and that's what we're trying to get accomplished in pushing back on this legislation to make sure that the right terms, and it's a narrowly crafted, targeted provision that, frankly, in my opinion, needs to happen, but not in a broad way.